It's the unwelcome sign of the times. Drivers experiencing sticker shock at gas pumps.
Rising gas prices. This is crazy out here.
With the national average at $4.33 a gallon, a troubling new trend is on the rise: gas theft. Crimes of opportunity now happening across the country. Criminals are targeting unattended vehicles for gas, but they're not going in through here. Instead, they're drilling holes from underneath your car and draining your tank. It happened to the Antonucci family in San Diego. Heidi Antonucci's husband, Rob, filmed the video.
He had just filled up his tank. There was no way that he would be an empty.
Heidi was terrified that leaking gas could lead to something worse.
Fuel plus fire plus air, creating a explosion, of the gasoline, or lighting him on fire, lighting the whole truck on fire.
Auto mechanics say it's incredibly easy to do.
It's plastic, there's no sparks, so you literally could get a drill bit this big and siphon the gas out of this tank in a matter of a minute.
And once the tank is drilled, it can't be fixed. Getting a new one could cost drivers more than $1,000, but experts say there are ways to protect yourself.
If you have a garage, park your car in the garage all the time. If you don't, try to create a space near your home with cameras, with security lights, something that's going to deter a thief.
Adding this warning: at the current gas prices, the temptation to steal for some may be too much to resist. Guad Venegas, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel.
Waves of missiles struck a Ukrainian military facility less than 15 miles from the border with Poland, bringing the fighting ever closer to NATO's borders. Dozens of people were killed and more than 100 were wounded. There was also heavy shelling northeast of Kyiv. Today, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky visited soldiers at this hospital in the capital as Russian forces advance on the city. And among the war's casualties, American journalist Brent Renault, who was killed when Russian troops opened fire on his vehicle near Kyiv. It's been 18 days now since Russian tanks rolled across Ukraine's border and airstrikes started pummeling cities and civilians. CBS's Chris Livesay is at the Black Sea port city of Odessa tonight.
A war that many fear could spill into other countries has taken a dangerous turn, with Russia firing on a Ukrainian military base close to the Polish border and the NATO alliance. The sky turned red, witnesses say, when roughly 30 Russian missiles struck the Yavoriv training base in western Ukraine, leaving this smoldering crater. 35 people dead, and an escalation of the war now only a few miles from Poland, a key NATO ally. The base was routinely used by U.S. and NATO trainers over the years. Heavy shelling also rained down on Chernihiv in the north and Mykolaiv in the south, where the morgues are now so full, victims are laid out in the freezing cold. Among those spared gathered here, below an abandoned market, their childhood interrupted by an invading army, even though these are Russian speakers, the very people Putin says he wants to protect, says the mayor, Alexander Senkievich.
Mykolaiv is, let's say, border between Russians and Western civilization.
If it falls, the next domino is Odessa, the former crown jewel of the Russian Empire. And today, Ukraine's biggest port on the Black Sea. Ukraine's president says an attack here is imminent. It's a city half deserted. The half that's still here steels itself with anti-tank defenses and optimism, like this soldier who calls himself Snake. For 15 days, we've stood up against the second biggest army in the world, he says. It's weaker than us. During an air raid, we descend into the happiest bomb shelter you've ever seen. 2 weeks ago, it was a trendy restaurant. Today, volunteers prepare more than 8,000 daily rations for soldiers in their fight against fascism, says manager Nikolai Vitnyansky.
But Vladimir Putin says that you're the fascists, that you're the Nazis. I'm looking around here. You don't look like Nazis.
So, okay, I'm Jewish. What do you think? Is it possible to be Jewish Nazist? It's impossible.
During World War II, he says, at least Hitler admitted that Jews exist. Vladimir Putin says the Ukrainians do not.
And Chris Livesay joins us now from Odessa. Chris, just how imminent is an attack on Odessa?
Well, Jerika, British intelligence said today that Russian forces are advancing from Crimea in an effort to circumvent Mykolaiv and head straight here to Odessa. This is a city Vladimir Putin called out by name in his declaration of war, and the people here have been taking that threat very seriously ever since.
Chris Livesay for us in Odessa, thank you.
Outside of Kyiv appears to have dispersed to surrounding areas. But first, new Maxar satellite images show the Russian convoy outside of Kyiv appears to have dispersed to surrounding areas. Maxar reports armored units were seen near an airport north of Ukraine's capital city. Some of those vehicles have also moved into forests. The convoy started massing outside Kyiv last week. Meanwhile, the White House is addressing reports Russia is considering seizing assets belonging to U.S. and international companies that have pulled out of the country. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said a decision like this would result in, quote, even more economic pain for Russia. CBS News foreign correspondent Ian Lee joins me now with more. Ian, it's great to see you. What more can you tell us about this possible financial threat from Russia and the White House's response?
Yeah, Meg, this is part of Russia's retaliation to the sanctions put on it by the West. And on top of that, the Western company's decision to halt operations in the country. The White House says that if Russia seizes the assets of those companies, essentially nationalizes them, that it'll result in economic pain for the country and also send a clear message that Russia is not a safe place to invest in or do business. And Moscow has also imposed an export ban on a string of products targeting what it calls unfriendly countries. This includes telecoms, medical, agriculture, and electrical equipment. In total, the ban includes about 200 products targeting 48 countries. But Putin's efforts are unlikely to have an effect as many countries only import Russian raw materials. Russia is facing a large-scale default on its debt, which would be the first time, get this, since the communist revolution in 1917.
Wow. Let's back up for a minute and go back to the breakup of that Russian convoy outside Kyiv. What might this indicate?
Yeah, military experts may say this is what Russia should have done in the first place. While they were in a column stretched out for 40 miles, they were essentially sitting ducks for attacks by Ukrainian forces. Now that they're dispersed and taking cover, it makes it harder to hit them. The Pentagon says that the column, though, is fighting its way closer to Kyiv, gaining about 3 miles since Wednesday, which puts Russian forces 9 miles from the city's center. Another advance is taking place from the northeast of the capital. That one is still further away, about 25 miles, but we've seen videos of that column facing stiff resistance. One in particular showed Russian tanks being battered by artillery. The ultimate goal, though, appears to be to surround Kyiv, which Western officials believe could happen within days. Military analysts predict once they do that, they'll try to bombard the capital into submission instead of trying to take it by force.
We know that Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that an attack on the country's largest port, Odessa, is, quote, imminent. Mariupol is also seeing heavy fire. How has Ukraine been able to defend its coastal cities, and has there been any fighting on the actual water?
Yeah, these Black Sea ports are crucial to controlling the country, but also for reinforcing Russian troops. Odessa is the third largest city in the country. For weeks, it's been digging in and preparing for a Russian assault, either by sea or by land. Russia clearly owns the waterways. Their navy is far larger and more capable than Ukraine's. Earlier today, there were reports of a Russian warship firing several shots off the coast of Odessa, although it isn't clear what they were targeting. But in the past week, Ukraine's Navy has also claimed a bit of a victory, saying that they hit a Russian warship by rockets from the shore. As for the city's spirits, they seem high. Residents vow to put up a stiff resistance like we've seen elsewhere in the country. Mariupol, though, on the other hand, is in a desperate situation. It lacks food, medicine, and electricity, water. We saw Russia bomb that maternity hospital yesterday, which killed 3 people, including a child, which just shows the indiscriminate attacks by Russian forces. City officials say 1,300 civilians have been killed so far in the fighting. Moscow seems to be trying to pound the city into submission, but the fight goes on. Capturing it would be a strategic prize. If successful, Moscow would essentially have a land corridor between separatist-controlled Donbass region straight to the Crimea.
The numbers are staggering when we look at the casualty so far. And finally, Moscow announced something rather bizarre. It will open evacuation routes from Ukraine to Russia every day at 10 a.m. local time. Is there a sense people would actually want to flee to Russia?
No, not really, to put it frank, Meg. That's kind of been a non-starter for a lot of Ukrainians. And because, as we've seen, Russia's word isn't really worth much. Even before the war, Vladimir Putin said Russia wasn't going to invade Ukraine. And now its foreign minister is saying Russia isn't attacking Ukraine. So, as we've seen, clearly that isn't true. And on the ground, these humanitarian corridors have been constantly attacked despite Moscow's assurances. So, one could understand why civilians would be hesitant to venture out to Russia or really to anywhere and put their families at risk when so many innocent people have been killed. But really, many have little choice. They can either try to flee or stay under the constant Russian shelling. So, as we've seen, many have chosen to make the perilous journey. President Zelensky said just not too long ago that about 100,000 people have been evacuated in the past 2 days, but still, thousands more remain stuck, still hoping to flee this fighting.
Yeah, it's just heartbreaking to watch those images of so many people trying to make it to safety. Ian Lee, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us.
An attack close to the Poland border near an international military training center, a possible message to NATO from Russia about any interference as military aid has been flowing into Ukraine. ABC's Maggie Rulli is on the ground in Lviv. Good morning, Maggie.
Hey, Janae, good morning. Yeah, we've been hearing air raid sirens here overnight and this morning. These attacks are some of the closest we've seen here to Lviv since the war began. But guys, one of the major concerns is really how close they are to Poland, a NATO country, and it is escalating an already very tense situation. This morning, Russia expanding their offensive in western Ukraine. Ukrainians say Russian warplanes fired 30 missiles, 22 intercepted, 8 hitting this military base near the Polish border in Yavoriv, where American forces were recently training the Ukrainian army as part of a NATO mission. killing at least 35 people and wounding 134. The attack escalating tension between Russia and NATO, coming just one day after Russia vowed to treat all arms shipments to Ukraine from NATO countries as legitimate targets for military action. With Russia intensifying their attacks, President Zelensky is insisting they would have to decimate Kyiv in order to control it, defiantly egging them on in a new video saying, if that is their goal, let them come. NATO countries now on high alert, but President Biden still firm on not sending U.S. troops into battle.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
Instead, announcing $200 million in new military assistance to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz speaking by phone with Russian President Putin, calling for an immediate ceasefire. Despite hopes of negotiation, there's no sign of any pause in the fierce fight. In the strategic strongholds of Mykolaiv, attacks on civilian areas are escalating. This man, running for cover, is blast strike near a playground. With the city under fire, a daring operation to rescue 35 orphans by aerial recovery mission, a U.S.-based organization working alongside the Ukrainian government. These children rescued after spending 8 days trapped hiding in a bomb shelter.
You could see it in their faces as soon as they saw us. They're just glad they're safe.
And in Mariupol, Russian tanks caught on camera firing at this 9-story apartment building. In the city's hospital, unthinkable loss. We meet Oksana in a shelter in Lviv after traveling from the east with her 3 children and 2 dogs for days by bus.
It was awful. The situation is because every day we had shelling and people, there are no food. All shops are closed and it is very, very awful.
Were they shelling homes, residential areas?
Yes. One district was shelling.
They know the pain Russia can inflict, fleeing Crimea in 2014, and now again forced to leave everything behind. Oksana says the future's unthinkable. At 20, her oldest son is not allowed to cross the border, and she refuses to leave any children behind.
No, what can I say? We have no anger. We want to live in peace Ukraine. That's all.
Oksana was adamant, telling us she doesn't blame the Russian people. All she wants is peace. And guys, Savvy, her story is just so common here in Lviv. A U.S. official tells ABC News that if this war continues to escalate like it is, we could see 8 to 10 million refugees. And they say the world simply doesn't have enough resources to keep up with that number. Eva?
He really for us there in Ukraine.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here.